race car. We'll find out what this is.
All right, hi, how you guys doing? So, my name's Andy Wadsworth, and for the last few years I've been learning a lot about my dad. He's been telling me stories off and on all his life, but lately, I don't know, something's changed where I've been getting a lot more stories from him. And these stories, every time I think about it, I think, man, this is like Forrest Gump. I mean, he's just got so many really cool stories. So I thought it'd be cool to kind of share some stories. But instead of standing up here for like 15 minutes or whatever it's going to take, and just tell them all, I'm going to tell them in 3 chapters. Okay? So my last name is Wadsworth, and my dad's nickname was Waddy. So this is Waddy's life stories. So the stories will be about my dad growing up in Pennsylvania, and then he served in the Navy for 2 years, and then his civilian life. And all 3 have some pretty interesting stories to them. So he was born in 1929 in Lamont Furnace, which is in southwestern Pennsylvania. He was the oldest of 9 children, and he was delivered in his mother's bedroom by the next door neighbor who was the local midwife, because there was no hospitals in. So kids, you can imagine if you were born in your mom's bed. Kind of scary, wouldn't it? So big families were very common back then. In fact, his grandmother had 22 children. Crazy. 2 sets of twins, 1 set of triplets, and the rest were all singles. It's wicked. So, of course, in southwest Pennsylvania, it's dense forest, denser than what we have around here. And so, all the food they get, they hunt for. They hunt for deer, they hunt for all sorts of animals. They would even eat squirrels if that's all they could get. So, through all of this, my dad became quite a good marksman. And that will come up and show that it's a very, plays a key role in his life later on. So, southwest Pennsylvania has two main exports. One is coal, which most of you probably know what coal is, right? Kids, you know what coal is? You don't want to see it in your stocking around Christmas time, right? The other thing they have is moonshine. Lots of moonshine stills back there. Now, kids, what moonshine is, imagine it's something that your parents might buy in that little bar over there. It's not something you would ever want to taste because it tastes horrible. It's something that if you were to smell it, you would just go, "Whoa, what is that, vinegar?" Right? And for some reason, adults drink it. Yeah. So my dad, at 16, he had to go to work. So he went to work with his dad in the coal mine. He did it for 3 days. Said, that ain't for me. He went to moonshine. So at 16, my dad went off to be a moonshine runner, and he was a driver of cars. Now, my dad is what I would call a respectful troublemaker. He liked to cause trouble, but he didn't do damage generally. He was generally trying to do things that weren't really bad. But he was a bit of a troublemaker. And one quick story about that. It was around Christmas time one year, and his family didn't have a Christmas tree. And the local police station, outside, every year they would decorate their Christmas tree. Yeah, you know what's coming. So he and his buddy went out. Maybe they had some of that moonshine. And they sought to chop down the Christmas tree in front of the police station. Luckily, they didn't get very far. The policeman came out and go, "What the heck are you guys doing?" And of course, they ended up spending the night in the police station that night. And they went home the next morning. So my dad, it's clear, he was a good fit for running moonshine. So at 16, here's my dad driving around, and he's delivering moonshine far and wide. So southwest Pennsylvania, it's over here, backwards here. And he's delivering it over here to Virginia and Maryland. And he's also doing lots of local runs. And most of the local runs, everything back there is dirt roads. And so, this is illegal. Oh, by the way, kids, this is illegal, right? This moonshine is not something the federal government wants people doing. So he's running moonshine, and they have to have really souped up cars, right? The first thing they do with these cars is they put an extra gas tank in. It's not for gas. It's for the moonshine, right? And then they usually throw in some jugs of moonshine, and that's what this little thing here is. It's kind of an example. That's about what moonshine looks like, kids. It looks like water, right? But it doesn't taste. So he's driving moonshine on the local roads, souped up cars. They would put lead in the running boards so that when they went around the corners, their cars would be able to hold the ground. The police cars didn't have that. So the police cars couldn't keep up with them. So they had super fast cars, they had lead in their floorboards, and the cops pretty much could never catch them. And so on weekends, they would take these souped up cars and they would go off with the other drivers and they would have races. And how many of you guys ever watched a NASCAR race? Probably a few of you, because it's the most popular spectator sport in the nation. NASCAR was started by moonshine runners. It was all moonshine runners, and they decided, hey, let's make this official. They went down to Florida and they started racing. Now, my dad never raced in NASCAR, but he did know a lot of the guys that started that whole program because he raced against them when he was younger. So he continued delivering moonshine, working on cars, and racing on weekends for about 2 more years. So he was almost 18 years old. And he was on a local delivery, and lo and behold, he got a flat tire. So he got a flat tire, and he's repairing the tire, and a nice state trooper drives up behind him. And he offered to help. My dad said, oh, no, I don't need help. I'm doing just fine. And the trooper says, oh, come on, let me help you. And he comes on up there. He notices, he looks in the back of the car, and he says, what are these jugs back here? He says, oh, those are just some water. I'm bringing home some water. I'm kind of thirsty myself. Let me have a sip. So he uncorks the top, takes a sniff, goes, whew, son, you got some bad water there, kiddo. He says, you know, I've been trying to catch you a long time. You and I both know that's not water in there. And so my dad found himself in a courtroom the next day in front of a judge. And when the charges were presented, it didn't look good for dear old dad. So the judge asked him, so, how old are you? And he lied a little bit. He said, oh, I'm 18, because he was only a few days short of his 18th birthday. So the judge says, okay, I'll give you 2 choices. You can go to jail, or you can join the armed services. My dad thought for just a few seconds. He says, I'm going to join the Navy, because that way they're shooting at the ship, they're not shooting at me. And that's the end of chapter 1.